Hey gang, today we're going to talk about medieval knives. That's a subject that we've studied a lot of. We've done knives at Arms and Armor for many, many years as far as trying to recreate those pieces that you see in artwork, but that are also in a lot of the historical finds, the archaeological finds of the period. And to do that, we're going to use a couple examples. One we've just recently completed of a medieval knife, and then a couple of historical pieces from the Oakeshott Institute. The medieval knife is kind of an interesting subject as it is ubiquitous throughout the period. There are examples that are found to this day along the Thames in London even, and you see them in archaeological finds from across Europe. They are being found recently, a new Dark Age type piece that was a carved grip on it that is very important. Was recently found in Sweden. It's just a great area of study that not a lot has been written on, but you can find lots of good information these days out there if you're interested in studying the subject. Some of the basic components of the knife are, of course, the blade, the tang, and the grip. This kind of piece is what they call a full tang, and that is, if we look at this historical piece, where the profile of the actual knife is cut out in full width across the knife itself. In this case, this particular piece has a bolster, this widened area that it's at the beginning of the actual knife handle, and you can see that it is pretty consistent with a modern made knife. They've been making knives like this since the beginning. And so you can see this very nice knife that came from a village that was excavated, but it had last been occupied when the plague hit, and after that no one lived there. So it is a very dateable piece. It's one of the few pieces in the collection where we have a really nice context. It's got some interesting aspects to the full tang, the nice shape to it, very modern looking. Still has one of the rivets through the piece of grip to hold on the scales, which are the slab sides of the grip, as you see that. And then also you can see the real variegation or lines in the piece from the material it was made. It's a wrought piece of steel or iron that is made into this knife. So it's a great example of a full tang medieval knife. The other type of tang you see often is what they call a Widdle Tang, or a component that is where the tang narrows. Here is a sax blade, much earlier of course, but you can see that it tapers down and then the grip would be formed around it. There is just a portion of a grip still on this piece that is corroded right to it, but it would have been a big piece handle on there that would be quite long, and then stick out of the scabbard, obviously, because the scabbards would usually come up pretty high on these. Again, it is just a forged blade, very similar to a modern knife, but is from that period and creates the Widdle Tang, which is the tapering tang. A lot of people get wrapped up in one tang style is better than another, but that's not really a thing. It's just about how it's constructed, what it's constructed of, and how it's put together. In the knife we're going to look at here that we've just completed, we see a couple of the components that we really like in medieval knives. You see it's got the scale of walnut on each side. We have little pins in a pattern, and that's quite common to have probably more pins than are physically needed to hold it together, but they would often be decorated by having little pins, or sometimes it's just pins in the wood. They don't even actually go all the way through. You will sometimes see that on these pieces. It is a knife shape that is very much one that you could go into a kitchen store and almost buy today. We did a nice scabbard for it that slides right in and hangs from the belt. The hanging system I stole from a Bruegel. So I was in a museum exhibit of Bruegel prints, I think, or etchings, and saw this on one of the belts where it's a round loop, probably wood or metal of some sort, and then the tine or the thong comes up and loops around it and then ties off on a tab on the scabbard itself. You can also see that the scabbard is decorated medieval people had a tendency to not appreciate large plain surfaces. They oftentimes would put some kind of detail on there. Sometimes there's scenes, sometimes quite elaborate hunting scenes and things like that, but then also geometric patterns, repeated patterns or punches are often used to do the scabbards. And on this one we have a little metal shape on the end of it here. A lot of times these are just folded around and a butted seam. You oftentimes, especially on knife parts, do not see the seam sealed at all. It's just heavy enough material to kind of hold its shape and is held on with a mastic usually. So you can see a medieval knife like this would be excellent, works really well on the belt. You could use it for eating or fighting or what have you as a tool every day, but it is a type of knife that is an excellent handy thing to have on your belt. We enjoy making these. Oftentimes we'll have them throughout the year on the website, though we haven't had too many on there lately because it's been so busy. If you're interested in these kinds of things a lot, we would highly recommend, and I think we've done this in our book on knives, but Knives and Scabbards put out by the London Museum is a really great book. It has lots of information, but also great illustrations where it shows the types of blade shapes and things that you have, and then also some of the really excellent illustrations showing how the scabbards would have been decorated in some cases, creating really interesting looks and fun things to try and replicate today. So if you like medieval knives, it's a great thing to study. It's a great thing to look into and have an interest in. You can still find these for sale at different places, you know, in dealership, by dealers and things like that. Not too expensive, but medieval knives are a really interesting subject, and we hope you enjoy this little look at them.